Shalom to Rabbi Scott Berman speaking to us from his quarantine here in Israel in Modi'in.
Shalom, shalom. How are you?
So, welcome home. You immigrated, made Aliyah from Michigan yesterday.
In fact, yes, I am very excited to be here.
So, your Aliyah story is a bit out of the ordinary. You and your wife made Aliyah the same day, the same date. That's normal, but a year apart.
Exactly. That is right. In fact, when we were looking to set the date with my Aliyah advisor, he was looking for the dates. There was the 7th of July, there was the 22nd of July. There were just a few flights that Aliyah was flying. And in the middle of the conversation, he stopped and he said, "It already says the 7th in your Aliyah tik." And he hesitated, and then he realized that was my wife's date. That's why it was already in the file, this July 7th, because he knew he hadn't put it in for me. So how was it already there? But then he realized it was for my wife the year before.
And how did that happen?
So for the last 40 years or so, almost 40 years, my wife and I have been making Aliyah. We just never brought it to fruition. And over the years, this dream of ours to make Aliyah was always on the front burner, but we didn't have really a set date. As time went on, our children, we have 4 children, and over the years, our children themselves, one by one, made Aliyah. Last year, in the middle of the year, my wife received a job offer from KPMG Tel Aviv to be the director of U.S. corporate tax. And so in discussing it, should we do this? We came to the conclusion, of course we should do this. So she negotiated with KPMG and they came to terms. And I had been, at the time, I was the head of school at Farber Hebrew Day School, formerly Akiva Hebrew Day School in Southfield, Michigan. And so we decided that she would make Aliyah the coming year, and I would give notice to the school that in 1 year's time I would, because it was very, in the middle of the year is very close to the beginning of the next year, and it's very difficult to put a school in that situation of trying to fill the position of head of school at that point. So it was in July that I gave notice to the school that the following July, this July would be, I would complete my tenure with the school.
So you're telling us that you were a principal of a school. It's a very important and educational role. How did the students really look at your decision?
In terms of that, the school that I was the head of, like most, I would say, modern Orthodox schools, they are Zionistic. They're religious Zionists. So this is an ideal that is held as one of the mainstays of the educational platform of these institutions. So the idea that a principal, a teacher, a head of school, a family, students would be making Aliyah is not at all, exceptional in that regard. It's an ideal that's fulfilled.
So it's lead by leave.
Yeah, exactly. The strength of modern Orthodoxy, in the diaspora is also its weakness, because we have many families and teachers and students that leave the environment because they are fulfilling that ideal of Aliyah. And so it's a good thing, for sure. Of course, it's the ideals met. It's also difficult for those environments because they lose important people that are in the institution.
And you, Rabbi Berman, did something that most of us can't do these days. You got on a plane and you flew up in the air.
Well, it's what you have to do in order to complete this process. It wasn't something I was overly looking forward to and comfortable with, to be honest. But again, it was just simply a requirement. There's no alternative. There's no boat ride, which would have been just as bad, right? There's no way to quarantine and to make it over. And so, you have to have a little bit of bitachon and hope for the best. And God willing, these 2 weeks of quarantine will come and go, and I'll be able to return to normalcy, to whatever degree we have normalcy.
And were the personnel wearing something that resembled spacesuits?
They weren't wearing spaceships, but spacesuits rather. But they were, wearing masks, and that was a requirement that they had to repeat regularly to ensure that people would conform to the requirements, because not everybody wanted to. It was clear not everyone wanted to keep their full face, both mouth and nose covered, and so there was, throughout the flight and before, announcements made that this is not a suggestion but a requirement.
So, Rabbi Berman, what's your message to potential Olim that are watching us now?
Aliyah is a very personal decision that people have to make. I don't know that I can say some blanket rule to give to everybody about making Aliyah. I'm certainly not judgmental about people that do not make Aliyah or haven't yet made Aliyah. My approach is simply to try to encourage and be a role model for people, to emphasize why Israel is such a important central feature of the Jewish people's existence, and if people are inspired by that to want to follow the model of others who have made Aliyah, that's wonderful.
And making this move from quarantine to quarantine, so to speak?
This entire experience is unique. That's an overstatement, and it's been said by so many of us, right? It's been isolating. There's no question about that. Over the course of this past year, the entire year, where I have been the sole immediate family member left in the United States, where all of my family, including my wife, have all been in Israel, before the pandemic even began, was isolating. The trips that I would make back and forth were wonderful, but over the course of the year, it was isolating, and it would just became amplified during the pandemic, in which you're isolated even further from friends and acquaintances, and the rest of humanity, during the pandemic. So here I am in Israel, and there's also that continued sense of isolation. I've been here less than 24 hours now, so it's hard for me to reflect on my experience of isolation while I'm here in Israel. But it's a continuation of that. And the way I look at it is that it's a small price to pay to fulfill this lifelong dream of making Aliyah. I've waited so long. So for 2 more weeks, I'll be isolated from family and from the environment around me. Again, that's a very small price to pay ultimately for the ability to fulfill this dream. I'll share with you something that struck me. Hopefully, I won't be overly emotional, but in saying Slichot this morning. So the first piyut that we say at the very end, as we know that the piyutim of Slichot are usually conclude with something positive. And so at the end of the first piyut, it says, She'enu shochein ruma, v'kabetz nefutzotenu mikatzavot adama, tomar latzion tkuma, v'shivasar b'tamuz hafoch lanu liyom Yeshua v'nechama. And it was hard for me to read those words. I'll translate them. Turn to us, you who reside on high, and gather in our scattered ones from the very ends of the earth. Say to Zion, come get up, and turn our 7th of Tammuz to a day of salvation and comfort. To gather in those who are scattered ones from the very ends of the earth, and to realize that's me. I've been one of those scattered ones, gathered in.
Okay, Rabbi Scott Berman, thank you very much for joining us. And again, from all of us here at Arutz Sheva, welcome home.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Shalom.